Good evening, Vancouver. Welcome back to Canucks After Dark, a Tuesday, July 11th edition. It is the dog days of summer for the Canucks, even though we get to cheer on Canada's team, the Florida Panthers, in the Stanley Cup Final. As always, joined by my co-host, Canuck Clay. How are we doing today, Clay?
Sorry, Parker. I got three streams going and I can hear us like three different times.
Oh, no.
So I'm here. I'm with you. But three Parkers is better than one, I guess. Give me a sec.
Probably not all talking 1 second apart from each other. I'll let you get that sorted out while we,
please do.
we do a quick intro. We've been away for a couple of weeks. I think our last show was on the 27th of June, and we decided, hey, for the summer, we can tone it down a little bit. Canucks are out. And what a excellent decision based on all the Canucks news that has flooded in over the past 2 weeks. We've had
nothing.
Yeah. I mean, Alvin, second place GM of the year, which, you know, if the Canucks had won round two, maybe he gets further, because I think the voting is after round two.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
The playoffs, yeah. So that always skews it a little bit. There's rumors about Zadorov, Lindholm, Joshua still. It's like, nothing new though. There's essentially been not much going on.
Yes.
So
and I apologize, Parker, and the viewers for that horrible start. See what happens when we move the show by one day. I get all thrown off. No, you guys know my setup. I have multiple screens, multiple feeds going, and I heard our show in my ear, but it was 3 seconds behind. So I was really confused as to who I was talking to and what I was supposed to say. So I'm here. Great to see you, Parker. Good job on winning your softball match last night. That's why we had to delay by a day. And yeah, I'm happy to be talking to you because I can't believe it's June 11th already. And one thing I want to talk about when we get going is at the end of the season, we thought, all these UFAs and RFAs, it's going to be a very busy time, and hopefully we can keep a lot of these guys. There's a chance we're going to keep like one of them.
Yeah,
that's weird.
It's 2020 off season all over again. Like, can they really lose to Foley and Markstrom and Tanev like all at once, and Stetcher?
I know.
Although in this case, it's different, right? It's a case of we have, you know, a lot of players who played better than their contracts dictated, right?
Yeah.
And they're becoming UFAs, and because of that, they are going to demand more money, and because of that, the Canucks are not going to have enough money to pay them. So, of course, that leaves guys like Elias Lindholm, who is likely on the outs, Nikita Zadorov, who's rumored to maybe have some sort of hometown, even though he was only here for a few months, discount potentially in the works. But then that also opens up the possibility of using that money elsewhere, right? Can you go find the next Dakota Joshua? Can you go find, use that $3 million in Ian Cole somewhere in some other way? Do you go out and try to make a big splash? Do you try to go out and get a Jake Gensel? Do you try to go get Chris Tanev? What are you trying to do in the offseason to take this team that was, top of the Pacific Division, probably, the way that they played against the Oilers, who are now in the Stanley Cup Final, probably top 5 team in the NHL this year, right? Like they were genuinely very successful, but how do you take that next step, right? What is the difference going to be? Is it going to be, excellence from within, right? Are you going to have people within the organization already there play better, right? Are you going to say, hey, if we get Elias Pettersson back to Elias Pettersson level next year, which we've been saying for months and it never really materialized, is that another step, right?
Sure.
Is Philip Hronek going to be, if they bring him back, assuming they do, is he going to be better than he was during the course of this year, right? Are you going to have Thatcher Demko for the playoffs, right? All these little things that you're hoping can add up, but then what can you do from the management perspective to assist in that process as well?
Sure. Well said. Fangirl, thank you for being a supporter, a member here for almost 2 years now, which is probably as long as we've been doing this membership at least. So thank you, Fangirl, for being a supporter. So Parker, this is what I think we should do. And by the way, a quick word on that in all seriousness, we want to congratulate Patrick Allvin for coming second, a distant second, but he came in second. But it was Jim Nill of the Dallas Stars, and like you said, they voted on this after in the second round, where Dallas had advanced. They had just beaten Colorado, and whereas we had just lost to Edmonton. So even if we advance, I think Dallas, you look at the way they built their team and how deep they are, and everyone's before they lost to Edmonton, everyone was calling them the favorites to win the cup. So.
And it's so deserved. Like you look at how this team is, how the Dallas team is done, right? For what Allvin did in 1 year, sort of a 1 year turnaround, was obviously phenomenal. But what Dallas did from an organizational perspective, you look at the guys that they had exceeding, right? Jason Robertson, Logan Stankoven, right? These guys who were,
Wyatt Johnson,
later first round, Wyatt Johnson, later picks in the first round at the very least that excelled and came up. Then they go out and they trade for Chris Tanev, and what a monster he was against Colorado, right? I'm sure that played a big role. They're like, wow, Chris Tanev completely shut down Nathan McKinnon over a series. That probably helps the GM of the year quite a bit as well.
Yes. So kudos to Patrick Allvin, but there's nothing wrong coming second. Actually, very, very similar. If you look at the vote pattern for Elias Pettersson coming second in Lady Byng, it's exact same thing. There was a runaway winner, and then Pettersson just edged out Austin Matthews and one other person, just as Patrick Allvin just edged out the other two. So a distant second, but at least second place finishes for both Pettersson and Allvin. You add that to the Jack Adams that Talkata's won. Excuse me. A likely second place for Demko in the Vezina, and then a likely win, hopefully, for Quinn Hughes with the Norris. It points to a very good year, doesn't it, Parker? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And as a first building block in the contention window for this team, it's fantastic. And obviously we got the bit of excitement and thought of, hey, what if this team finds a way to do it all? And of course they get within one game against the team that's now kind of getting, stomped by Florida a little bit. Not stomped. I mean, they were very good in game one, but they lost. And, the deserve to win-o-meter does not matter once you're in a playoff series, as we know in that Nashville series.
Yes. And speaking of stopping Edmonton, one key part of that is Gustav Forsling. Thank you, Irvin, for the $7 donation. Every time I hear someone call Gustav Forsling the best shutdown defenseman, a part of me dies. Well, us and 30 other teams that had a chance to get him on waivers. So don't worry. It's not just the Canucks. It's just that the Canucks did the initial trade of him away.
Yeah. He's been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Irvin.
What an addition, right? Like from last year, I remember it was all Brandon Montour. Like he was the star in their playoff push last year. And of course, having Ekblad doesn't hurt either. But Forsling has taken his game to another level, and that's what Florida needed, right? They needed that little bit of extra work on the D side to hopefully get over that hump that from obviously losing in the final last year.
Sure.
I hope they've got enough in the tank to take it the rest of the way. It's crazy. We could still be 13 days away from the cup being awarded.
I know.
It's ridiculous. June 24th is when Game 7 set for. That's way too late.
Yeah, even the Stanley Cup ride was June 15, like Game 7. So in 9 years or 13 years, it's advanced another week and a half. It's crazy. You're right. So I have an idea. Why don't we do this? Why don't we, for the first 20 minutes, let's give some updates. We'll do our best not to repeat what we talked about 2 weeks ago when we broke down every free agent, but let's talk about some of the updates that maybe we've heard. I think our viewers would really appreciate just hearing what we've heard from insiders and what we think is going to happen. And I would love to start us off by this because YMD asked thoughts on Canucks targeting Gensel, because Donnie and Dolly did this whole thing about, if you're going to offer Lindholm $7 million, why don't you just spend $1 or $2 million more and go after Gensel? So let's start with this. Lindholm, you kind of hinted at the start that maybe they're in on him still at 7x7. Is that what you've heard?
Yeah. Look, I'm so on board with taking a shot to go at a Jake Gensel. AFP, which is the website we used last episode to sort of get a projection on contract values, projects Gensel at 7 years, 9.3 per year. So a step up over what Lindholm is rumored to be in the neighborhood of, but you're talking about a guy who 77 points in 67 games, 30 goals. He was absolutely fantastic in Carolina. Like he was a great addition for them. And one of the, you look at the comparable contracts that they list here. Huberdeau is a comparable, which, I mean, he makes 10.5. Johnny Gaudreau at 9.75. Blake Wheeler at 8.25. They have JT Miller on here as well. Obviously 7 by 8 million. And JVR at 7 million per. So yeah,
Right.
it would be expensive, right? $9 million for a winger, 9.3 million. But for what this team needs, like they need a star winger, in my opinion, right? You look at like Elias Lindholm was good, especially in the playoffs, but do you want to be giving your 3C $7 million a year? Or
you can't.
Let's say you're putting him and Miller as your centers. Now you're putting Pettersson on the wing, and do you really want one, Elias Pettersson playing wing, and two making $11+ million on your wing? 9 doesn't seem that bad anymore for Gensel. Because what wingers does this team have? It's Besser, right? Besser is the only top end winger this team has, right? Garland is a great second line winger right now, but you don't have a star to go left wing on that top line.
You're right. And if they go three deep at center, $26.5 million between PD, Miller, and Lindholm is way too much. That's basically a third of your even an increased salary. So almost a third of the salary cap. So yeah, I agree with you. Like Lindholm is a nice to have, but I honestly don't think he's a need to have. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if you can make Gensel work, that would be sweet.
Yep. Dakota Joshua he's good as gone, right? I've heard that
someone's gonna give him way too much money. Like this has Toronto all over it to me. Or well, actually, the rumor I guess was Yzerman, right, in Detroit. I saw a rumor that said he was ready to pay Joshua like $4 million a year or something like that. And look, Joshua was great here, but we've sort of been down this rabbit hole before, right? The Antoine Roussel rabbit hole. Where they're paying him $3 million a year. Is Dakota Joshua a better player than Antoine Roussel? Sure, but that's not how you optimize your cap, right?
Sure.
You can't take all the money that you're saving from Tyler Myers and throw that all into Dakota Joshua, right? When you could, would you rather have Dakota Joshua at $4 million and then you add a winger at $5 million, or would you rather have someone making a $1 million that's 100% of a variable contract down on your third or fourth line, and then have Jake Gensel instead, right? It's just trying to get overpaying good players is a lot better than overpaying bad players.
Right. By the way, I just looked up this AFP. I didn't know it was a Google sheet.
Yeah. It's essentially all it is. It's pretty nice, honestly.
All right, let's stay in the forward. So Teddy Bluger. What would you do with him? Bring him back? He only made 1.8 last year.
Yeah, and his contract projection on here is 2 years, 2.2, so a slight raise in that case, but you would be adding a second year if you go that route.
Have you heard anything about him?
I haven't heard a word like at least not online. I wouldn't hate bringing Bluger back. I don't know if I'm paying him. Yeah, we're getting over 2 again. Like you're starting, especially because he's probably your 4C, right? That's a bit much for a 4C, right? Like when you're considering putting him there or Niels Oman in that spot, right? Is he better than Niels Oman? Yes, but can you take $1 million plus and put that elsewhere and get more value? I think you probably can.
Right. And okay, no, I agree. The fact that it's so quiet around Bluger right now, he's not a priority. I just don't think he is.
No, and he's a classic like July 15th signing, right?
Yep.
And when did the Canucks sign him last year? Was it day one?
Yeah, I thought Bluger was, but
it might have
Suter
been.
was the late one.
Suter was later. Yeah. But he's a guy that like, you can wait on a guy like that, right? There's going to be a couple teams that probably go to him on July 1st and say, "Hey, we'll give you, what you got last year if you want to come," right? And he might not.
And the last of the forwards, Sam Lafferty. I haven't heard a thing.
I haven't heard, again, that's got to be like how many Sam Laffertys are out there? Right.
Yeah, lots.
And the fact that like based on the first half of his season, he's getting projected 2.4. Like that's way too much for Sam Lafferty.
Yeah.
He was really good for the first 30 games.
Yes.
And then we didn't see him.
Yeah. So what's funny is we just went through 4 forwards, and aside from Bluger, who we kind of said maybe, and we said this 2 weeks ago, we're basically thinking the other 3 are going out the door. So the Canucks are gonna have to sign some guys. So let's go to the D. We'll save Hronek. Cole, we've both heard in the past week that they're going to move on from him. No surprise. $3 million for, he was okay. But I actually, even before his mistakes in the playoffs, Parker, I actually thought he was a little bit disappointing. I thought he was going to do more for us in the regular season. I don't know what you.
Yeah, I think there's a way to improve there for cheaper. Maybe not improve for cheaper, but get that value for cheaper, right? Without paying $3 million, right? I think they really valued him as a veteran presence, especially for this team that hasn't been there before.
Yeah.
But now that this team has been there before, at the very least, right? Now you have, Quinn Hughes has now played 2 real playoff rounds, right, in front of fans. So as all the other defense. I think that provides a lot of value, and I'm sure Ian Cole had some help in that. But I think now you can go and try to find, who's your next Ian Cole, right? Maybe someone who has a little bit more foot speed. That would be, something that I would try to go get.
Awesome. And thank you, Rain. Bluger was July 1st and Suter was August 11th. That makes sense. Thank you. And Justin says, heard Bluger and Myers are willing to wait to see what the Canucks do with the rest of the roster before committing. And that makes sense. We'll get to Myers in a second. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just go get Troy Stetcher for $1 million, or Jalen Chatfield, right?
Sure. No, that makes a lot of Chatfield. Yeah, bring everyone back. So Mark Friedman are basically, in essence, our 8th defenseman last year. Jolson was our 7. Do you sign him for $1 million for depth, Parker, or do you let him go?
I don't see any reason not to if that's what he wants to do. If he's willing to be a 7 or an 8, but for a guy like that, right? That's always a tough one, right? Does he want to be a black ace on a playoff team that maybe gets into a game or two if there's injuries? Right. Or do you want to go play on a Chicago or a San Jose or some other bottom of the table team that maybe you're a number 6 there, right? And you can, maybe you get paid the same, but you actually get to play, and maybe you get to play in well enough that you earn yourself a next contract too.
Right.
So I think there's some balancing there, and I don't think that's, but if he's going to come back for, a contract that you can entirely hide in the AHL, then I don't have a problem with that.
Sure. Let's get to the 3 big guys, literally and figuratively. Myers. Rumors are that he's willing to take that hometown discount of almost 50%, or maybe $3 million over 2 years. You do that? $3 million over 2?
Yeah, I think I'd rather do it for 1, but I think to get the discount, and even though, I don't know exactly what his value was. I haven't looked at like any of the sort of value charts.
Yeah.
I mean, like AFP's analytics has him at 2 years, 3.2 essentially. So it's not like a huge discount for his actual value. But if his actual value is $3 million a year for 2 years, then I'm okay with it. And because the thing is, I think it's a contract you can, like, if things go really poorly this season with, like, if Tyler Myers just is slower or something and then loses a step, you can probably flip him at the draft next year. And probably for nothing, right? If he's a pending UFA the following year, so it's pretty low risk.
Yeah. So kind of what Justin said, $3 million for 2 years or $2 million for 3 years. Rain. We've been hearing $3 million for 2 years, not 2 for 3. Yeah, $3 million for 2 years. Yeah.
2 for 3 is better.
Yeah.
But it's worse for Tyler Myers because you're committing. Well, it's $6 million regardless, but he's, he can get
play another year. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's go to the 2 really big ones that everyone's talking about. Nikita Zadorov, polarizing, but not in a way of people love him or hate him. No, everyone likes him here. It's the polarizing in that should we sign him and how much is too much kind of thing. So what does our little AFP say?
5 by 5.3.
Okay.
Which is a lot. For a guy who's probably your number 4, right? Yeah. Like that's.
You see, Dan Murphy took him golfing. You see that?
I did. That was that was so good. Just him and JT and Zadorov out of the golf course.
Who's the fourth guy? Like some sponsor guy or something? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the thing is, like he was the perfect fan favorite sort of guy, but also like this is an opportunity to get paid. So I can see why he'd go elsewhere, but I'd love to have him back for the right price.
I know he's the one guy I kind of want too. And then it was so funny, man, because Ian McIntyre said he tweets out that the Canucks are making a bit of progress with Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov. And then Dan Milstein quote tweets it. It says fake news. And Milstein is Zadorov's agent. Yeah, that's a bad look.
Yeah.
Yeah. On his natural left side, he's a third pairing guy behind Susie. So that's a lot of money, as much as he's good.
Yeah. And he's the, and well, it's what I said before we traded for him, right? When it was rumored that we'd be trading for him. And maybe when that first tweet came out, the Canucks had acquired Nikita Zadorov, I was like, oh, we are overpaying excessively, right? Because he's the prime overpay candidate. Now, we didn't pay that much for him, right? It was what, Rustevich in a third or a fifth or something along those lines. So they paid for him for a rental, which is fine, and he was totally worth it for what he provided. But yeah, I can he's the prime overpay candidate in free agency also, right? Someone, maybe a team like Toronto, because he is again like exactly what they need. I could see Toronto being like, yeah, we'll give you $5 million a year. Why not? And then will he live up to that contract? Probably not. But whoever he plays for will love him.
Yes. Okay. So now we go to Mr. Philip Hronek. And we know that is what's his qualifying offer again? We talked about this last time. It's in
let me go to the site that's gonna not exist soon.
5.3. So that's low.
So he won't take it, but it's enough to keep his rights. Which is good.
So a couple of things in the chat. Rain says Alan Walsh claimed fake news on Hronek wanting 8x8. And then there's this big big splash on Twitter today when Sat said that they could trade Hronek at the draft if they can't work out an extension prior to that.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you have his rights for the year no matter what, right? You give him that 5.3 offer. He will not accept it, but you have his rights. And any other team that you traded his rights to would then get that, that same, and he has arb rights too, right? So like he's going to be playing next year for whatever team has his rights at that point.
Yes.
So I can totally see that, right? Like I'm sure that for the Canucks, like that's such a significant amount of money to not know what you're doing. Right? Because if you go to arbitration with Philip Hronek, right, you don't know what you're paying him until late July, right? I think it is, right? So that's through the draft, through all of free agency. You don't know who your number one right D is going to be. Right? I think that's why and that's sort of the route they went with Pettersson though. Like they had a trade worked out. They were like, hey, we'll just ship you to Carolina if we don't get a contract worked out. And I think that's the same boat here. They say, hey, we need to get ahead of this. Here's the number that we're willing to pay you. This is if you either take it or we move you, right? Because that's our only options, because we want to know by the draft or at least by July 1st whether or not we are going to be paying you or if we need to go get another defenseman.
Right. Okay, so yes, I agree with everything you said. He qualifying offer 5.3. He's not going to accept that. Then Canucks can make another offer, right? Or they can only make the 5.3 offer.
So they can make the 5. Well, they can make if they offered him 5x7 or whatever, 6x6 or whatever the numbers were, that would qualify, right? As long as it's over that value.
Okay. Then Hronek's going to ask for this amount. Then Canucks will talk about this amount, and then they got to like sewer him in arbitration for a bit, and then either accept they got it, it's binding, and then but they could walk away from it, and then he becomes a UFA, which would be the worst scenario ever.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So yeah, what's the ask for Hronek? Like the rumored ask, at least.
Well, Rain's saying that the 8 times 8 that's out there is fake news.
That seems,
according to Alan
yeah,
Moore.
that seems egregiously high.
Then Rain's good. Didn't Vancouver offer 8 times 6.5? Well, that's what came out in just before the playoffs started. I don't know if that's being confirmed by anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it here, but I can't.
Yeah.
The Twitter search is terrible. So it's tough to pull off. But yeah, I mean, even if it's like, are you wanting to pay Hronek $7 million a year? Like, I kind of don't.
Yeah, I'm trying not to get biased, but Thomas Drance has been beating this drum. He still thinks he's the most important one because of what he plays, the right shot defenseman.
Right, and this obviously they're very important because they're a good number one right D is hard to find. Yeah. Quinn Hughes hasn't had like Quinn Hughes played with Luke Shen, right, for the longest time.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
that's so if you are going to move on from Filip Hronek because of the contract ask, you need to have a plan to replace Filip Hronek for the same or less money or more money if you're getting a better player. Right. I don't know. Are there any right defensemen out there even?
I was looking at this earlier. Isn't Brett Pesce right shot defenseman, and isn't he a free agent as well?
Let me tell you in 1 second here. He is. Oh boy, this spreadsheet's wide. He is he is a right shot defenseman.
Yeah.
His rumored, at least on this site, is 5 years, 6.3. Which is a pretty reasonable number. He's a good player. I wouldn't hate going that route. But again, you have to think he'll be better than Filip Hronek.
Right.
He's not an offensive defenseman. That's the difference. So Filip Hronek can put up points. Brett Pesce doesn't. But Brett Pesce is a very good defenseman. So it really depends on how you want to build your first pair. Do you want to have that dynamic, two guys who can rip the puck, or like one guy who can move with the puck, one guy who can rip it? Or do you want to have Quinn Hughes next to a really good shutdown guy?
Yeah.
That's the line you have to cross.
Rain, it's funny. This AFP site, I'm glad you told me about it, Parker, because it's kind of interesting. So for Filip Hronek, they actually list a 7-year long term of $7 million or a 3-year short term of $6 million. And to answer your question, Ray, this spreadsheet, it lists the comparables for Hronek on a long term deal as Sergachev, Ekman Larson, Trouba, and Cam Fowler. And then for the short term,
Ekman Larson is doing some work in that.
And for the short term comp, it's Neil Pionk, Torrey Krug, Jared Spurgeon, and Darnell Nurse.
But this is Darnell Nurse's bridge, not his 9.25 mil. It's his 2 by 5.6. Okay. So I think all these comps on the short term one are pretty fair, right? They're all RFA bridge deals, Pollock, Nurse, Spurgeon, and Krug, and none of those were egregious at the time.
Sure.
And look, if the Canucks could get Filip Hronek for 3 years at $6 million, I think I'd do that. Yeah. I don't want to give him 7 years of term. So if I can give him less money and less term, I would do that. He's obviously not going to want to go that route because someone would want to pay him long term. Right. Canucks have the cards though. He's an RFA, right? They could say, "Hey, we're only going to offer you a bridge." You're not going to take that. Okay, we're going to trade you to a team that we know also is only going to offer you a bridge, right? Like you can get a little, I don't know. You can get a little crazy.
So let's quickly, because we're almost at the halfway point. Let's quickly work through the two goalies. Then I think they're pretty easy. DeSmith gone. We talked about.
Yep.
Yeah. And she loves. I've heard some low numbers. So do you get blinded by a really good playoff run, or do you still Canucks? We've talked about this. They always like to do that 1 or 2 year bridge short term for RFAs for that 1.2 million, 1.1 million. They did that with Hoglander, with Podkolzin. Is that what we're going to see with him too?
I think so. I think it's going to be, 2 years, 1 point low,
Something.
right? Because I mean, he hasn't really, obviously, he's great in the playoffs, but
Yeah.
he doesn't hold any leverage, right?
Yeah.
It's probably going to be something to keep him as an RFA, and do the same thing that they've done with all of those guys, Höglander, Podkolzin.
Yeah.
I think he'll be in the same boat.
Okay. All right, that's good. So we basically did this 2 weeks ago, but we just did it again with some updated numbers at least, and some updated updates. There's one for you. But yes, 11 players, 9 UFAs and 2 RFAs. So here's the last thing I'll say, Parker, and then we can move on to other stuff real quick. But it's kind of what I opened with once I figured out my AirPods is I look back now of when we lost on that Victoria Day Monday, and we looked at these 11 players, not just us, but a lot of people were so excited about let's see how many of these guys are going to lose, but let's try and bring so many of these guys back. And now it is so quiet, Parker, around any of these guys that it might be Myers, Bluger, and that's it. Like that could conceivably happen.
Yeah, especially because those are the only guys they can sign before July 1. And if you have plans for these guys, you want to get those done before July 1, before they hit the open market, before any other team has their chance to throw any curveballs. Unless there's guys who you really think are asking for too much money, and you want them to get to free agency, realize they're not going to get that, and come back to you. But I think for this scenario, like the fact that it's been radio silence essentially, and it's not like, oh, they're really gearing up for the draft. Yeah, they're really gearing up for the third round pick that they have, right? Like, they've got scouts that'll make that pick. I don't think Alvin's going to need to be too invested in that.
That's so funny what you said about the draft, because I'm going to be in Vegas during the draft, and of course that would be a great thing to go to, but not to watch 31 other teams pick a first rounder, not us.
Yeah, but it's at the Sphere, so you could go for like the first 5 picks and then leave to see how cool it is.
That's true.
How much is it to get into the draft when it's at the Sphere? It's probably pretty expensive.
I spoke to someone who's in the chat. I won't reveal his name unless he wants to reveal himself, but I know someone from this community going to the draft, and he told me $200 US.
Yeah, see, that's too much for the draft.
Exactly.
Especially when your team's not picking.
Yeah. And Parker, juxtapose that to 2019, where as a season ticket holder, I got free tickets to the draft. Granted, we drafted Vasily Podkolzin, but I got to see Jack Hughes get picked and all those guys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, $200 US. Oh
yeah, that's like what I paid for my ticket to Game 1 against Nashville. Like that, I think I paid $265 Canadian. Like it was about $200 US.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably more fun than the draft would have been.
Would you pay $200 to go see the awards night though, and potentially Quinn Hughes winning the Norris? No,
I have no interest in the awards.
I would, but Gail's with me. I don't think she want to come.
I have interest in seeing the team that I like, the players I like, win it. Yeah. But the awards themselves, I don't really care that much.
It's a pretty
awards show. I don't think I've ever watched it.
It's brutal. It just shows like A level, B level, and then we get like D level celebrities for the NHL. Like,
yeah, it won't be great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. How about a quick word? Have you been watching the Stanley Cup Final? Have you been at least following it? What do you think? What are your impressions?
Yeah. So I watched the first period of Game 1 and the last half of the third of Game 1 because I was out that night, but it was on a TV. So that was great. Obviously a 3-0 win for Florida. Bobrovsky was a monster in Game 1. 32 of 32. Just so good. Florida just, they scored a couple goals in the first 22 minutes and they just shut it down essentially, which is great.
Yeah.
And then Game 2 last night. I was at softball last night, but I had the phone in the dugout. Because again, I was just checking scores. Like, all right, 2-1, let's go, and everyone was fired up. And then Evan Rodriguez put on a little bit of a show in the third period. Empty netter, put it away. And this was a much better game from Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
Florida sort of, had got goaltending in the first game. And Skinner wasn't bad or anything. They just scored a couple of goals. They scored 2 goals on Skinner. But last night's game, Florida actually showed up, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's well said, Parker. I couldn't watch game 1 because we were running a youth rally, but I watched the highlights, and the Edmonton coach didn't say dominate. He said controlled. Like, they were good, and it was really interesting because if you're an Oilers fan, you could walk out of game 1 saying, "Oh, we're just unlucky, but we were controlling the play, and as long as we keep doing this, we're going to be okay." But if you're a Panthers fan, you could say, "Man, we got outplayed, and we still won 3-0."
Yeah, we
right?
stole one. Now we're going to come out and
actually play,
firing. Yeah,
and that's what they did. Yeah.
I think I saw McDavid's interview last night. After they lost, I was pretty impressed. He was like, "Hey, we knew this isn't going to be easy, right? Like, we're just gonna keep battling." And I kind of like that, honestly, because you're in a tough spot and you're probably really frustrated, but Edmonton's got the skill to pull this thing back, but you gotta win 4 of the next 5. That is a tough challenge, and Florida keeps home ice.
Right. Oh, by the way, I'm just looking up NHL awards. My draft, my bad. 200 Canadian. So the standard price is 140 American. So 180 Canadian to 200 Canadian.
Something like that.
Yeah. But you can get in for as cheap as 60 American, but you're like the back of the sphere. So you might as well be sitting on Jupiter, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. You're a moon.
Okay, I'll look up the awards in a second. So you can get in for 60 US, but the good seats are about 110, 130 US. So
that's not bad. Sense. But if you had someone picking that you cared about, right? If you're a San Jose fan and you want to make the trek to Vegas for the weekend and go see them pick Celebrini, like, that's cool and fun.
That's a good point. So does Edmonton win any games? What do you think? Like, and I know
this thing ain't going 4. I don't think. Like, Edmonton was very good in the first game. The thing is, like, Florida's got the goaltending edge. That goal that Edmonton scored last night was the first goal that Bobrovsky's allowed in his 5-hole the whole playoff.
Wow.
It's the first one, and it was barely there. Like, it squeaked through. Bobrovsky looks like a world beater right now. And I don't see Skinner being that. He was very good against Dallas, and he was very good in game 6, game 7 against us. But man, like, Edmonton's got the top end skill. I think Florida's got a lot of top end skill as well. It depends on obviously Barkov's very important, whether or not he's back for game 3. But Florida needs to win 2 of the next 5 games. Bob probably steals 1.
Yeah.
Right. And then you just got to be the better team in 1 other one, maybe 2 other ones. Right. I think if Florida is the better team in 2 out of the 5 games, they probably win 2 out of the 5 games just because they're going to have the goaltending edge.
Unlike us, Irvin said nobody ever loses in a final after a 2-0 lead, especially at 2 at home.
Never.
And then Rick says, historically it's 49-5. And unfortunately the 2011 Canucks are one of those 5.
Yeah, the athletic odds were, I think, 79% right now for Florida. If Barkov is out the rest of the series, that goes down to 73%.
Okay.
So obviously heavy favorites because, again, they're up 2-0 in the series.
I meant to ask you, Parker, because I think when we did our show 2 weeks ago, obviously the finals weren't set yet. So do you care who wins? And are you rooting for or against Edmonton? Because there's been that discourse, right, about do you cheer for them because they're Canada, they're the only Canadian team? Do you cheer for them because they're the team that beat the Canucks? You can say that we lost, or do you cheer against them because we lost to them, or do you cheer against them because you want, or cheer for Florida because you want Luongo as a special advisor to the GM to get a cup? Like, where do you sit on all that? Or maybe OEL, you really want to see him have a cup?
I don't care that much about the Canada. Like, obviously, I think the Canada's team thing is dumb.
Right.
But for me, it's their division rival, right?
Right.
And it's a team that we don't like very much. If it was like if it was current day San Jose. Like, I don't have any they're a division rival, but I don't really have any disdain for San Jose, right?
Sure.
And same with Florida, right? Like Florida's given me no reason to dislike them. They've been trading partners with us. They have longer in the front office. Right. If it had been, but on sort of the, anti-Canada's team thing, if it had been Florida and Ottawa, I don't think I'd care that much. If it was Florida and Montreal, I don't think I'd care that much. If it was Florida, Toronto, I'd be heavily rooting for Florida, right? And same with Calgary, and it's probably same with Winnipeg also. I think proximity plays a bigger role to me than country allegiance or anything. Sure. But in this case, I am heavily rooting for Florida, because I feel like if Edmonton wins, it will be insufferable.
It'll be tough. And I was going to ask you, I actually don't mind. You mentioned them already, which is kind of cool because I was going to bring them up. I actually don't mind Connor McDavid's interviews. Like, I think he's been trying to show a bit more personality. Like, he'll laugh once in a while. Like, he's not the funniest guy in the world. But for whatever reason, Draisaitl just drives me nuts. Talk me off the ledge here. Or is it because...
I think you're right. I think I look at McDavid and I'm like, this guy just loves the game and he wants to win. Like that's all I see, right? And he knows that anything he says will be a soundbite, and he's just going to go out there and be like, yeah, we need to play better. We need to work hard. We need to win. And Draisaitl's not that, I think.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Oh, Draisaitl. He's not going to get, he's the one who punched Barkov. No, not Barkov. Who did he hit in the...
Yeah, it was Barkov, the elbow.
Okay.
No discipline. Carrick was the only one that got discipline, and it was a fine.
You see Ekblad trying to choke out Bouchard?
Yeah.
What was that?
That's like, the fact that doesn't get a fine is
and Bouchard had to tap twice. Like,
he did. It was a full on like MMA tap where it's like, all right, you got me. I'm about to go out. But obviously there's no. There's no Herb Dean in there to pull them apart.
I should be laughing. It was pretty weird though. Like it was really weird.
It was bizarre. I'm not a Bouchard fan per se.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't do that.
You can't do that. Oh man. Any other? Here's a couple for you. Just random things. Would love your quick thoughts. The Four Nations face-off. Schedule announced. 4 games in Montreal, 3 games in Boston, including the final. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I forgot it was happening. That's in lieu of the All-Star game, right?
Correct.
Killing the All-Star game. Perfect.
Yeah.
This is way more fun. I hope, I don't love that it's 4 teams. And my initial thought was like, it's mid-season. Teams aren't going to care that much. I think the players are going to care, right? Because it is the first best on best hockey we've had in a long time.
Sure.
And it is, Russia's missing, right?
Yeah.
A couple, Germany's not a contender, but I'd love to see a Germany team, right? I'd love to see Draisaitl in there. But these are the big 4, right?
They are.
These are the teams that if you put the Olympics together, 4 of the top 5 would be these 4 teams.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. We get to see, Canada, US on a Saturday night. Like, that's going to be awesome. And I hope everyone, obviously there's the injury concerns, but it's going to be absolutely sweet to watch.
Yeah, Canada, US, natural rivals. Sweden, Finland, obviously natural rivals. There's no real rivalry with Russia since they're just not there since they've got weaker. So I agree, because they said they wanted 4 countries that can be made up entirely of
NHL players.
NHL players. And Russia, generally you'll get a couple bottom 6 or third pairing D-men who are from the KHL.
Right. You'll get Czechia, the star KHL players.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Czechia won the world championship, but they're simply that's a world championship. It's not best on best. So I'm fine with these 4 teams as well. And I think it's, people were saying, well, someone asked me on my show, are you upset the final's not in Canada? And I said, no, they basically count the final as 2 games. That's why there's 4 in Canada and 3 in the US. So we'll just see what happens. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be really good.
Yeah, it'll be a really cool one to go to. If I can
Let's
find
go.
a way to, if we can go to that Saturday, February 15th USA Canada game, that would be awesome.
If we get like
Bell
1,000
too.
if we get like 1,000 paid members by that time, we'll go.
Yeah, we just got to find a way to get tickets.
Yes, that's true. Young Stars Classic.
Up, but who knows?
Yeah, Young Stars in September, Penticton. Maybe, or I don't know if you're going to go, but do you like that tournament?
I like to follow it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a little tougher when it's tougher for the teams that are doing well, right? The Canucks aren't going to have, I don't think, a huge Young Stars present. Like, do they have a lot of guys to put in there?
No, I don't, because there's no one drafted in the first 2 rounds this year.
Yeah, no one's getting added to the team this year. So if I end up in the Okanagan area during that time, I'll go to a game, but
yeah,
I'm not going to trek out there for it.
I hear you. I'm with you. And basically that's it. That's everything that's happened in the hockey world in the past 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah,
I think
it's crazy how easy it is to cover when nothing happens. So folks, if you have any questions that you want to ask us, whether you're here on YouTube, whether you're over on Twitter, feel free to throw them in the chat. We will see them. We'll see them come through. You might ask things that we've already mentioned over the last 45 minutes, in which case we will ignore you. But it's nothing personal.
Or nicely say that, Rain, we did talk about this already, and no, he's not robbed. Okay.
I didn't even see that, but yeah, we did already talk about that.
People were asking as soon as we logged in tonight about this whole sale of Cap Friendly to the Capitals. I admit, Parker, I have not read any of the discourse. I don't know why they bought it, if it's a competitive advantage, if they're trying to hide Tom Wilson's contract. Like, what are they doing? What's going on here?
So it seems that there's a handful of teams that have already built their sort of own internal cap-friendly system.
Okay.
And the Washington Capitals said, well, why don't we just buy an existing one? Which I think makes sense. They're essentially trying to buy out the people who run it, right? Because and I saw a really good tweet that was sort of like, you can go hire a few like Harvard educated money experts or whatever and piece something together, or you can get people who are experts on the NHL salary cap, the NHL CBA, who know these contracts in and out. So that seems to be the route that they have gone. It sucks for us because it's obviously a fantastic resource. It's the resource. I saw some people calling the guy who runs it a sellout, and it's like, well, if he wasn't making any money on the thing, like, if you're gonna get hired by an NHL team to do their cap management, that was probably the dream when he started it, right? So What was crazy to me about all this is like, why doesn't the NHL have one of these already, like a centralized cap system? Like, because so I think what Elliot Friedman said is the reason that it has to go private once the Capitals own it is because the NHL doesn't want there to be a fan accessible like NHL database of salary information, which is kind of ridiculous when you have Bill Daley come out a few days ago and say, yep, the salary cap is going to be $88 million a year. The lower limit's $65 million a year. Well, if we're not supposed to know what players even make, why do we need to know that? Right? Like it's such a silly reasoning. Like your most passionate fans are the people who would love something like this. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, it's crazy that the NHL doesn't already have a system like this, especially for their own internal management teams. Like that's bizarre. Like you look at the Vegas trade a couple of years ago that got nixed because of like the no trade clause not being known or something like because Cap Friendly didn't have it because it hadn't been tweeted before or something. Like it's ridiculous.
Speaking of Vegas, Justin says surprised Vegas didn't buy it to hide their LTI. That's pretty funny. That's good.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Good. The NHL refuses to use Cap Friendly, so they just didn't clue in.
Conn Smythe winners, if we had to name them now, is it Bobrovsky for Florida?
I don't know what his actual numbers are over the course of the postseason, but I can gather that, I imagine, really quickly.
You look at that. I'll look at the actual stats from everyone else.
Yeah, so he has 14 wins. Obviously, he's been all their wins in only 19 games played, which is obviously very good. A 202 goals against average, a 916 save percentage. So he's been very good. Obviously, I think Barkov is a pretty reasonable answer.
It's funny. Tkachuk and Barkov both have 19 points, and Verhaeghe has 18. So it's the three of them, and not just points, but usually it is points.
Yeah, it usually is. And then you also have, Gustav Forsling is a plus 14 with 11 points, right? Like there's, there's a lot of names you could sort of throw into the hat, but it's probably Bobrovsky, Barkov, or Tkachuk. And then actually Verhaeghe is 10 goals though. Like that's going to be pretty valuable. So I think the last couple of games of the series would have a big impact on that though.
And if it's Edmonton, is it McDavid's for sure? And then Bouchard and Draisaitl maybe as distant second and third? Or
I have to think it's McDavid, right?
He's got 32 points. Yeah.
Yeah. It's either him or Draisaitl. I guess I mean Bouchard could get it too, but I think it's just McDavid or Draisaitl. Whoever has, it's probably McDavid. It's just I can't see Connor McDavid leading his Canadian team to Stanley Cup as the captain and not getting it.
I agree. That's true. This came up. How do you think the Canucks would have fared against Florida? Not well.
Yeah, I think they would have been competitive, but I think the injuries would have really piled up. It would have been tough.
Well, here's something we haven't talked about because it happened a week ago. Did you hear about this? Gaston's comments. What was your reaction?
I didn't care that much. I mean, I've never really been a big fan of the guy. And then I actually saw the clip of him on that podcast, and I was like, why do you have your own jersey hanging from your door behind you? Like that was pretty lame. And again, look, if you want to go after Canucks fans, like I have this thing that like no fan bases are worse than any other usually, right? Like there's some real idiots in our fan base. There's some real idiots that are Oilers fans. Every single fan base has some absolute clowns. So just be like, you're, oh man, Oilers fans are the worst. It's like, yeah, but like we've got some real clowns as Canucks fans too. So I think attacking fan bases is silly because it's pointless. But yeah, you can't be a national broadcaster and call, an organization trash or whatever or a joke or whatever he called the Canucks organization. That was silly of him. And then, him saying, you guys have to watch me on the panel. And he wasn't on the panel. He was on the little post game hangout after.
Oh, okay. Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, sure. That's fine. That's makes you look silly and fine by me.
Yeah. I did a lot of, media, I wouldn't say defending him, but just saying he's young, he's got potential, and he'll learn from this kind of thing. It didn't bother me as much as it bothered a lot of people, Parker, because I agree with you. I like your perspective that, there are some Canucks fans that are really bad, just like there are bad fans in every single city. But yeah, I could have done with the comment, your team's a joke, like, because that's not true. Yeah, that's the only part that
it was silly. I just don't care about a lot of these things. That's sort of been my mentality.
Can't be bothered.
I just shouldn't care about these things. It's not worth my time.
No, actually, that's a really good way of staying sharp. Yes. Have you heard about this? Trading a mid-round pick for Gensel's rights in order to give him that 8th year.
So you can't do that.
Oh, you can't even do it.
The 8th year is based on the team that has his rights at the previous trade deadline.
Very good.
You would have to. So Carolina could give him an 8th year right now, and that remains that way.
Gotcha.
Even if they were to trade his rights, as far as I remember, unless they've changed it. But that was my. That's at least how it used to be, if I remember correctly. So I think, but if you want to secure his rights, so you have an extra couple of weeks to negotiate with him. I mean, you have to be sure that you're going to get something done because that does give that player a lot of leverage, right? Like, well, you traded for my rights. Are you really just going to let that pick go for nothing? Because I want more money now.
Sure.
But it's an interesting idea. I wouldn't hate it. I'm not. We're at a point right now where mid-round picks mean nothing.
Yep. UFAs. We talked about Guentzel. Who else is at the top of your list?
That picture's frightening. You need to put that away.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, well, I just want to show you the picture. I mean, show you the question.
I mean, Gensel's the big one. I think the Canuck. Yeah, you need either a number one right D, whether that's Hronek or someone else, and you need a top line winger. And then I don't care what you do in the bottom half of the lineup. Right? Do what you did last year. Go get a Suter, a Bluger, a Joshua, a Ian Cole. Go get a bunch of guys for around $1 million to 2 to 3 for the top end of that. And just fill it out with guys that you think are going to overperform that. But for your stars, like you got to go get a winger. Because right now you have one top level winger, and that's Brock Besser. Connor Garland is great, but he's a second line winger. I want someone that you can put with Miller and Besser that's going to be electric, or someone that you're going to put with Elias Pettersson that is going to be electric.
Right.
And really, carry this team scoring wise.
Do you like Teuvo Teravainen?
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's that top level though. Like what's he producing nowadays?
I don't know, but they're projecting him at 4 million or so. So
yeah. So he's I mean, he's like a Connor Garland-y sort of point producer, right?
Sure.
40 to 50. He had a 65 point season. He actually had a 76 point season back in 2019. So he's got some top end skill. But that was earlier in his career. But yeah, he's probably a good, a good second line winger. Like if you want to put him with Pettersson and right winger, I wouldn't hate that.
Yeah. All right, 5 more minutes. What percentage of Canucks fans is cheering for the Oilers, do you figure? I'm going a quarter to a third.
Yeah, it's probably around 25%. Like the diehards aren't, the casuals are probably.
Right. Good. Hey, Rev Trev, Canucks signs. I know Trev is like he's the biggest Zadorov supporter.
I am too.
Yeah.
But I every dollar matters. And I whatever it takes to win at this point.
Yeah. What do you think is more realistic? Alvin re-signing 2 UFAs or making a big splash, i.e. trade or sign a big name UFA?
Big splash. I think it's what this team needs. I think you need something
like
big.
I like it.
And I think you might as well, right? Like this team showed that they can do it. Like this team showed that they can compete with the other teams, but where was the holes? We know where the holes in the lineup were, right?
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, the team was pretty good in the playoffs, right? Goaltending was good. Depth forwards were fine. We had, we're going to have to replace some guys there, but the big hole was top 6 winger. So I would love to make a big splash. Try to cut some money elsewhere if you can. And go get, a star player.
There's a couple of people. Look, Nabil says move suited a third line center. And he mentions Declare, and that one intrigues me a little bit because of his speed and playmaking. And he's not going to be that expensive, but does he move the needle, I guess?
Yeah, I think, again, good depth. And, I mean, he's like a 45 point guy, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
He had a 58 point season. This year he put up 42 points.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, he's a solid player. But probably like, very Dakota Joshua, I imagine. Like he's probably a guy who's going to get a decent amount of money.
For middle 6 production.
It's an interesting option. Like I would have nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with going after Duclair. Again, it's all just value for money in this league.
Hey, Trev. They offered thank you. We did talk about this, the 7.7, and we talked about how that Rick Dolly and Don Taylor were saying, why not just add another 1 or 2 million and go after Gensel? Exactly.
Yeah, throw 2 more million in there, get Gensel, and call it a day.
Yeah. You want to tell everyone our plans for the next couple of weeks, Parker?
Yeah. So obviously we haven't been here the last 2 weeks, and we weren't here yesterday because we had a miracle win in softball to get to have a late game. So we are going to stick with the 2 weeks plan for one more episode. So our next episode will be Monday, June 24th. So make sure you subscribe to your notifications on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, all the good stuff there. After that 24th episode, the following Monday is July 1st, free agency. Clay will be away, but I will be here, and I'll maybe find someone else to fill in that gap, or maybe it'll just be me. But so July 1st, I'll do at least a free agency show here. And then after that, who knows? Because Clay and I are both, away for decent chunks of July. So we might just have a gap for most of July, and that'll just really allow you to build up your excitement for when we come back, whenever that is, in late July or August. So make sure you join us on June 24th and July 1st. June 24th is going to be hopefully, that's going to be Stanley Cup Final Game 7 if it gets to that, which I'm hoping it doesn't. Let's go Panthers in 4. And then it's going to be right before the draft, which maybe we'll talk a little bit about the Canucks draft potential. Maybe they've traded Philip Hronek by then. Who knows? And we'll also preview free agency, because hopefully we'll have some more leaks and news coming out by then.
That's true.
Especially if the playoffs are over, we're going to start getting some more, a lot more movement on, and a lot more legal tampering, I'm sure, going on at that point.
It'll be a very previewy type show, because you're right. That will be the end of the Stanley Cup Finals. We'll be talking about that. And then, that week is exactly the last week before free agency and draft, which we don't have a pick until the 3rd round. And I don't think you and I are going to be projecting they're going to pick with the 80th overall pick in the NHL draft.
No, I am not. I'm not going to do a lick of draft research unless they trade Philip Hronek, and then okay, who are they picking with that?
Yeah,
but
it's kind of freeing actually that we don't have to. Yeah, but we'll see.
Nice.
We'll see.
It is nice to not think about.
Absolutely. Okay, so 2 weeks from now, and then you the week after, and then July we're gonna have to play by ear because we're both out of town. That sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, folks, thank you all very much for joining. If you missed any part of the show, you can rewind back on YouTube, or you can find it on your favorite podcast platform in a matter of minutes. Clay, any parting words before we wrap up?
No, it's very quiet on the Canucks front, and we'll see if that changes over the next 2 weeks. I know it will, because hopefully we're going to, especially by the 3rd week of June, we better start hearing a little bit about intentions and whatever it may be. But even though they can't officially sign anyone until July 1st, unless it's their own guy.
Next time we talk, hopefully the Florida Panthers will be Cup champions.
Exactly. Sounds perfect.
Very hopefully. All right, folks. Thank you all for joining, and we will see you in 2 weeks.